Hello, everybody. Are we rolling? Yeah? All right, cool. I'm Jesse. Nice to meet you all, and everybody watching at home. I'm really excited to talk about this stuff because it's my favorite subject on the planet. Doesn't get any better than this, because this is what we're dealing with all the time, and we just have no idea that we are until all of a sudden we do. We start to notice, and then we're like, ooh. And what we're going to talk about today is focusing. We're going to go through all the laws so everybody has a basic understanding. What you see is they all correspond with one another and tie into each other in major ways. They are the foundational, fundamental operations of the mind of the universe, and therefore everything just kind of ties together into a neat little story, which we're going to tell. But the law of one is the very first spiritual law I ever learned. And I am not your typical person. I wasn't your typical teenager, wasn't your typical young adult. I stayed nearby my house so that I would be close to my little sister, and I never went away to college. I didn't really have that crazy college experience that people did. Plus, my parents raised me that alcohol and drugs and things like this were no bueno. More so that it was you were a lesser person, you were a weaker person to succumb to such things, which you can see their perspective on something like heroin or whatever else. But as I came to learn, their perspective was a little skewed, and I ended up having some really positive effects much later in my life, being literally pointed to cannabis because of my anxiety. And anybody who knew me was like, Jesse should really smoke some marijuana. He could use it. And for me, when I smoke weed, I'm just a normal person. And I get very, and then okay. And I calm down. So it was a very interesting experience for me. I was 28 years old when I started to socially drink, because I felt like not drinking was judging everybody. I was feeling not invited to things. So I decided to just socially drink, and I was going to, try marijuana. And when I had such a positive reaction to it, and it helped my ADD and it helped my depression, it was so good. I remembered that as a child, I had pledged to one day try LSD because Steve Jobs said that he never would have created Apple computers if not for an LSD trip in college. And I really valued his opinions on many, many levels, and I took that very meaningfully. So at 29 years old, I was like, I think I want to do that. So I looked into it, and when I did all my research, I decided that I was going to do mushrooms because they were a living thing and LSD was synthetic. And I just felt more comfortable with that. And they seemed similar, even though now I would tell you that they're pretty different. But I'm very nuanced about all these things because there's lessons to be learned from these plant experiences. And the very, very first lesson of my psilocybin experience, which I ended up just doing by myself in my home. I had some friends who were next door who knew that I was, cruising on some mushrooms. I had no idea what to expect. But the very first thing was oneness. Not like yogi oneness where you're like, oh. It was just sort of a visceral, oh my God, I'm connected to everything. Everything. It's all me. I'm not separate from any of it. And I was filled with so much gratitude too, and that was the second thing that made the idea that these medicines had been demonized over the years so silly to me, because I went, oneness, and thank you. As soon as I thought thank you, I went, why did anybody ever tell me this was bad? This is so good. I'm so grateful. Oh my goodness, I've been an ungrateful son of a gun. And I really just was such a transformative experience. And there was a whole bunch of things that I learned in that instance, and I could not really define them to you until years later. Now I'm going to be able to define them to you. And so many of them came from the law of one, which is a channeled work from three professors. I want to make sure I got their names right, but basically Ra, who came to Egypt as a spiritual teacher and is known as a being there, is actually a social memory complex. And what that means is, essentially, the universe splits, from one to a mind, and then the mind starts doing stuff, and I'll go over this stuff so you can understand better for those just jumping in. But the activity inherent in this, I apologize, I walked myself down a pier that I didn't want to go down, so I'm going to start over for what I was talking about. But the one thing does this infinitely, okay? But then, at a certain point, it reaches a pole where it starts to do the reverse, where it starts to come back together. Because it was always one in the first place, and it starts to realize itself again. So in the future, consciousness is made up of social memory complexes. Essentially, if everybody in this room said, "Oh man, you guys are great, love hanging out with you, let's do it more. You know what, wait, better, let's be one guy. Should it be a guy? Maybe a girl. How about a girl? What color hair should we have?" And we figure it out, and we form this joint consciousness. So Ra is a joint consciousness who is sending information essentially back through time, because there is no time. And everything is sort of this flip-flopping mirror, and I'm going to explain how some of this stuff works, of everything. Like our perspectives are skewing our view in this room. There are other perspectives. If we erase certain things that we're perceiving right now, I would just see me, and 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 me. Because I was seeing you at the level to which you really are, just me. The bits of me that are Jesse are really just silly, superficial things covering up my body. The inner thing is just a deviation of you and derivative of you, a piece of you, piece of you. And you would be me in this same moment. In fact, you are me. I'm just one of the guys in this long, spread out, people holding hands in one cell, one soul to the next soul to the next soul. So where does it end and where does it begin? And when does Jesse become Ra? Or when does Ra become Jesse? And when do you become me? And it's a much more complex tapestry than we've ever even begun to imagine. So I'm going to get into teaching some of these things to you today, but the reason why I wanted to explain, sort of my background in sort of what my beginning of spirituality was, I am a pattern recognizing machine. I was an atheist until I was 28 because you're not taught anything like this in school, and I had no basis for it at all. And then when I started to see that some of the things I'd been taught weren't exactly so, I changed my whole brain around and started to open myself up to these concepts. And what I learned from mushrooms is the thing that made me know that this information in the Law of One, which was channeled, some person pulling it out of thin air, and I'll tell you more about that in a little bit, I knew it was right because I felt it in my bones. Like in my bones, because I already had a sniff of that information, and I'm going to go through some of the things that are broken down in just a little bit. But first, I want to go through the Law of One. The Law of One and the other 12 laws of the universe. So I have them broken up in threes because they're really important to each other in those groups. The only thing I've really done here is put these things in order. Okay? This is information that is sort of a mix of lots of different spiritual, cultural backgrounds, belief, these things. There are all sorts of orders. But my order is pretty important because it just basically will show us how consciousness is evolved. What came first, the chicken or the egg? The idea for the chicken and the egg came first. Idea comes before form, always. Solidity, that's an idea. That doesn't exist unless somebody thinks of it. It literally doesn't have to be. Nothing has to be. Everything that is was thought of. And the reality of sort of infinity and timelessness and all these things that we know exist on a quantum level in science is that the mind had a chance to think of every single thing that it possibly could think of before it ever actually made anything. or did anything. So it's just like a ridiculous foregone conclusion. There is a higher power, there's a higher mind. Of course it is. Nothing happens without an idea. Nothing. It's just impossible. So, in the beginning, there's nothing. There's just one infinite. You can call it big, you can call it small. Size doesn't exist, nothing exists. It's nothing. On my tree of life, they have it in the Kabbalah, in the tree of life. It's this circle, so I cut this out. It's an empty hole. If I could cut a hole through the door, there'd be like it's nothing. Nothing. Oblivion. Okay? From oblivion comes the mind. So first you have the law of one. Everything is one. Came from one thing. It's still one thing. 2, everything is mind. Everything that we are perceiving, because you literally don't perceive the nothing's not on the paper. Everything you perceive is mind. The mind of the universe, the idea for the chicken and the egg, the idea for the humans, the idea for a room, the idea for shapes and color and density and differentiation. So, as soon as this happens, essentially all of this other stuff occurs. All of this occurs. I made this a little bit further away to separate it just a little bit. This here, this 9, is why 3, 6, and 9 are so important. And why in the tarot it goes to 10, and then you move on. Because this is sort of the realm of creation. And this is the realm of repetition. Create, and then we do it more. And we do it more in sort of specific ways that you can understand. Now, when the nothing and the mind are coming awake, and let's say that we're freezing this moment, because all of these moments are just going to stack on top of each other. When consciousness wakes up, it's just sort of like there's no time. So consciousness just naturalistically stacks one idea on top of another. It's just like thoughts. And it rests. Right? So but before any of that happens, I'm just going, stop! Just as it's starting to like open its eyes. And what does that mean, open its eyes? I mean, like, all I can do is metaphor to talk about nothing, to talk about the mind. All of this has no form whatsoever other than ideas of form. Ideas about shape, ideas about color, ideas about everything that take place in this mind. When the nothing and the mind are now present together, it creates a polarity, which people, if you know what a polarity is just one pole to one pole. That's how. And they're kind of the same, but different. Well, that principle of polarity comes from the creation of the mind that came from the nothing. Now there's polarity. Now there's two things. So this is a fundamental rule of the universe, polarity. All things in the universe have polarity because God does, the universe does. So now getting into the second realm, as this thing's just barely beginning to open its eyes, it started to move. And what is movement ultimately? It's a vibration. So we get, action coming. But really it's just sort of not thinking, it's just doing. Vibration. Beginning of the very first vibration. But of course, a vibration is a plus and a minus. So we have relativity now. We have the opposite of what we have. If we have that, we could also have the opposite of that. So now relativity is created because there's this one thing. So what if this thing was just backwards, right? Inside out. So the vibration, and then the backwards version of that vibration. Guess what that is? Gender. The plus and the minus. The two things, they come together. This creates balance. The law of gender states that everything in the universe has gender. Not a penis and a vagina. It just has two very distinct vibrations that are relative to one another in their vibration. Okay? How do we feel about these two little sections right here? Cool? And there is some paper and pens up here if anybody wants them. Okay, so now, additionally, just sort of a step forward, because what I'm saying is we're like mid-action right now, okay? It's really interesting. This is a cool concept for me. I make comic books. So, and the cool thing about storytelling in comic books is that essentially you need 3 panels to tell a story. And there are ways to get around this, but even if you're getting around this, it's because you figured out how to do these 3 panels in 2 panels somehow by making your eye notice one thing and then another thing. Because what we have to do is we have to set up a premise, you know, the start and the end. And what happens to get us there? This is comic book storytelling across the board. You're just constantly, you can start building on this, like this one tells the start for this one tells the, you know, like, so you don't have to do that for forever. This 3 can just become a continuous adding, you know what I'm saying? You just keep adding panels to this to tell a longer story, but you're always like, okay, Johnny's happy. La la la. We'll give him a thumbs up. Johnny's happy. Right? And we'll give him a balloon to make him extra happy. And then we'll be like, kick it, the balloon is popped. And Johnny's like screaming, because lightning's got him, lightning! And his body's electrified, Johnny, electrified, it's terrible. Okay, and then Johnny's on the floor, and he's dead. He's got a flower. This is tombstone. Poor Johnny. Alright, the X's. Okay, so we tell a story. Johnny was happy, then lightning came, and he's dead. Story. That's all of storytelling. It's coming right here, right? 1, mind, polarity. Vibration, relativity, perpetual transmutation of energy, inspired action, cause and effect. This is, and if you want to think of it as the one thing, an infinite well of possibility. Okay? It's infinite potential. From this nothing came the universe. The entirety of everything came from that. Okay? So you can actually think of it as a well of energy, a well of potential. And then inspired action is the universe's mind going, I want to do something. What am I going to do? So now we're sort of just in the first action, the eyes opening of the universe. And the eye opens, creates this first bit of what will be the perpetual transmutation of energy, which states that just energy is always changing. Because it was one thing, now it's become all sorts of things, and now it's trying to get back to being one thing again. It's split to lots, and it's going to come back to being one thing again. In the future, now, it already is, it was yesterday. It's crazy. Quantum mechanics, it's already there. And essentially, the future is being changed and the past is being rewritten all the time. And the multiverse is folding in on the multiverse. And the idea that you and I are the same person, things are flipping and flopping and changing behind the scenes in ways that we can't even imagine. And I see evidence of this in so many of the things that I read and perceive, but it's very hard to even get to wrap your head around. So, we're not going to get into that yet. But, energy is always changing. Inspired action gets us there. And this creates the cause and effect that stirs the pot of the universe, makes the things go. So here we go, we've essentially got action, consciousness in action, an individual sort of action. But then, beyond that, we have the next round, which is rhythm, correspondence, and infinite compensation. Okay? And this basically just says that from here, we're going to do it a lot. Right? So, just within this pattern alone, of like these 6, we're seeing a rhythm, and And there's different rhythm. You can call this a rhythm and this a rhythm. You know, there we go. We have 3 rhythms right there. There's a bit of rhythm throughout this whole cycle. We would call the entire thing a rhythm of 9 it's going to go through. But there's a rhythm of 3 here, there's a rhythm of 6, there's a rhythm of 9, and there's other rhythms built into this stuff as well. So rhythm is the next thing. This stuff has essentially created the first rhythm, the first eye-opening rhythm, the first vibration. After that comes correspondence. Correspondence is beyond rhythm. Correspondence is basically sort of experiencing something again, but in a different octave, a higher or lower octave, right? So something like this. If we look at the universe as it was once one thing, but then it became one thing and 2 things, and these 2 things created a polarity, and that polarity created a vibration, and the vibration created relativity, relativity created gender, and gender created the perpetual transmutation of energy, the perpetual transmutation of energy created inspired action created cause and effect, and cause and effect created rhythm, and rhythm created correspondence. Correspondence comes up here to here. There we are again, on the left side of this beer, but we're deeper into it. We've gotten deeper and tighter into it. That's correspondence. And then there's more correspondence over here. So we come around again. Correspondence is circling the drain. We get to a certain point, and we're like, okay, this is the point A of the drain. And then we wind all the way around, and we're in the same place again, kind of. But not quite. We're in a different octave. And if you play music and you go, you know, C, D, F, G, A, B, C, right? We go back to C again because now we're up into the next octave. And the same thing happens with the universe and the way the universe goes. So correspondence teaches us about octaves and the way the universe expands and kind of stacks on itself like that. And you can think of it either way, stacking, expanding, and you could be like falling forward into it, or it could be enveloping, you know, like there's the perspective of all of these things is very relative. And that's why it's a challenging subject for most people, but I love double talk. There's a lot of double talk. It essentially goes on here because these concepts can play a lot of ways, but it's kind of an art to see them and understand them and, you know, see the beauty in it. And as you do, the richness of their real meaning comes out over time, right? And you just kind of feel it. So anyway, that's correspondence. Rhythms coming back around again. Anyway, is this pretty self-explanatory? Infinity. Infinite compensation. People like to, you know, talk about this law as like, man, you can have anything you want. Blah, 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 blah. Like, cool. That's all really superficial ways to think about the laws of the universe. Better to think about it like this, really, with no physical anything attached to anything, because it's just pure. It's pure mind. Man. This is the mind. This is how the mind figured itself out, right? And within the mind, because everything comes from mind, is there a limit to what a mind can think? No. The mind can think anything. And if the mind can think anything, and everything here is the mind, from the physical things to the, you know, soft and squishy thing, everything's just mind. There can be any amount of money, any amount of opportunity, any amount of anything in the universe, because it's all just mind. And there's infinite mind, so there's infinite compensation. Finally, the last law is the law of attraction, which really doesn't fit into the whole shebang. Because the law of attraction is the law of creation. Because you are the smallest ant and the greatest piece of God there is. Okay? So you're all of it, and if you're attracting it, it's what you created. And because of things like infinite small and infinite big, essentially anything outside of you is equally as much inside of you. Because all of creation is in your mind, and you're projecting all of your universe out from within. And this is another lesson of psilocybin. the magic mushrooms, which was an amazing one to experience. I told this story last time, but it's good to talk about it again, because I didn't understand it at first, because it was a very hard lesson to learn. But I was sitting in bed, because usually, like I said, I take these things very seriously. I don't take some aside and come to my house, guys, popcorn time, let's get naked. It's nothing like that. It's meditation and really trying to center myself and bring back information and walk around and observing and trying to understand what I'm experiencing. Because what you're experiencing when you take something like psilocybin is a change of frequency and density, which is what we're going to start getting into as we talk about the Law of One. A change of the dimension you're living in, how you're living, what you're feeling, because you're no longer vibrating in this other place. You get lifted up. So, the reality of attraction is that we are just creating whatever we want with our thoughts. Everything is mine, and we are mine. And as long as we're recognizing and understanding these rules, we can essentially pull into our universe whatever we want. Any questions? Rock and roll. Any questions online?
No questions. Cody is in the house though.
Oh, rock and roll. Hey, my brother. Love you. Okay, so so I want to talk about this just one more time, succinctly, before we get into the Law of One. The lesson of the plants is we are one. It was the first lesson that I learned becoming a spiritual person. What I'm going to talk about here that Ra channeled through, Carla Rucker, Don Elkins, and Jim McCarty from 1981 to 1984, is something that has been backed up in many ways by the Vedas and certain cultures and spiritual thought on the planet in different ways. More well corroborated by another bit of kind of channeled information through hypnosis. A lady named Dolores Cannon, if anybody's heard of her, she was able to get people to a very deep state called the Akashic state, and she would bring back information from in between their lives. And we're going to talk about this in a second, about reincarnation and how these things apply, because Ra talked about this stuff a lot. But Dolores Cannon and her books on the convoluted universe back up so much of what's being said here. There are plenty of people, if you go online, who discount the Law of One. They're idiots, pure and simple. Dummies. They are intimidated by bland, dense information and things that you really kind of have to interpret a little bit, and you need to have some fundamental understanding of some of the stuff to get what he's talking about. But it's foolish to not acknowledge the very consistent and very accurate information that Ra has given, and it's very appropriate to pass on some of this information here, and he has put it forth better than most of the other cultures have, so I'm using him instead of using these other cultures because they're not putting it as clearly as he is. Okay? So, as I said, Ra's a social memory complex. This was channeled information. You know, you can find out a lot more about it. It's not really food for your soul or your brain to understand it better than it's very consistent information. And it goes a little something like this. We are living in a grand illusion. Okay? What we think we see and we think we know and are perceiving is not the way it is. This place that we live in is actually a school for spiritual growth. And we have all come here or volunteered to come here to grow our spirits and to help the others to grow their spirits as well. It's hard. It's meant to be. There's only one person on this planet, despite seeming individuality. Just one. You're teaching me. I'm here for you. I'm here for myself. Because you're me, and you're me, and you're me. So it behooves me to be good to you. Because you're just me. Free will and I'm going to get into this in a second, the three distortions. Free will is one of the distortions, and free will, if you watch Star Trek, there's the classic villain, the Borg. The Borg do not have free will. That's why we do. Because if not, we would just be an automaton to the universe. And this experiment here is a free will experiment. It's a choice. In fact, the dimension that we live in here, the third dimension, is the dimension where we choose whether or not to serve others or serve ourselves. And depending on how we polarize will depend on where we go next on the other side of things. Okay, finally, we are living in, I won't say a realm of forgetfulness. We have made an agreement to enter into this place, forgetting who and what we truly are. The analogy I always love to use is there used to be something called the Game Genie, and you could plug it onto the old school Nintendo cartridges, and you could put in these codes to change the gameplay. And one of the things was called the moonwalk on the Mario Brothers, and I love playing Mario. And the moonwalk would make you just like fly above the board. And I don't know if you guys have ever played Mario, but there's pretty much no bad guys above the board. The occasional bad guy. So this just makes you God, and you beat the game in minutes. And it's no fun. And guess what? I stopped playing. I didn't play Mario again for years. Because, the Game Genie, having the knowledge, having the ability to just go around all these difficult things, it lost its sweetness. And that is why we forget. That's not to say that we aren't meant to reclaim so much of the memories that are right for this time on Earth. Now, when I did the mushrooms, I said that I had a whole bunch of realizations at the time, but I couldn't articulate them, right? So when I was listening to this stuff, years ago now, we're living in a grand illusion. Yes, I know that. I saw that on the mushrooms. I was an atheist. And when they kicked in, I went, I'm an idiot. Holy crap. It's not real. It's not real like I thought it was. It's an illusion. It is an illusion. And as you see, the fact that we're coming from mind, it's all illusion. It's all a solid thing that we've made collectively. And because we're so powerful together, the fact that we don't believe so many things, we're just limiting what's possible. Limiting our friends from succeeding, limiting our family from doing better than us, limiting everybody in every way because we want to get there first. We're that powerful. And the muck of our minds is really holding us back in a lot of ways. There's only one person on the planet, despite our seeming individuality, another suspicion of the psilocybin immediately. I've forgotten. Forgetfulness. Another suspicion of the psilocybin. There's more. I know there's more. I've forgotten. These are true for everybody. And this is how I knew this information was accurate as soon as I heard it. It's like, yes, all of that is true. And we're going to explain a little bit more how this goes. Now, there are three distortions that Ross speaks about. And the first one we started talking about already is free will. Because if not for free will, we'd be the Borg, right? So we have free will and we can choose to not follow the universe, to not be sweet to the planet and reciprocal, because, this dualness to everything. We have a dualness to the planet. The planet came before us. We came out of the planet. We're symbiotic. It's one with us. When we look down, that's you. And we haven't been doing a very nice job stewarding ourselves as an inanimate thing. We haven't been doing a very good job stewarding ourselves as animals or as plants and trees and forests. And it's all us. And everything that we're doing, we're just hurting ourselves. Right? So now, the first distortion is free will. The second is light, or what Ra calls the Logos. Now, the Logos, if I can get his little interpretation of it correctly, or rather, I should say the Greek. In Greek, it means word, plan, reason. Okay? Word, plan, reason. So this is very interesting, right? Light, Logos. The light is word, plan, reason. So the light is the densities, the differentiation of solid objects and shape and form. The light is the plans, the word, the vibration. Light. And that is a distortion as well as free will. And distortion, defined, right, is anything that goes against the fundamental idea, that all is what? So free will goes against that idea, because why you do something different? You're one with the universe. Why not just be just like the universe? Light, differentiation, separation of things, separation of shadows. All these things are suggesting a separation of the universe, of God. That's not true. So once again, it's a distortion. The third distortion, if I'm getting them right. Oh, did I do them in the wrong order? I did! I thought so. Okay, so I'm sorry. The third distortion is light, and this order is important. The second distortion should be love. Now, love, you might describe as preference. Ooh. But you could also describe it as imbalance. This thing's perfectly balanced. And then as soon as it goes, ooh, this! Oh, now we gotta try it the other way too. Ooh, this! Ooh, this! Ooh, this! Ooh, this! Ooh, this! Ooh, this! Okay, now we're back to balancing it. Because we've started the rocking. The rocking, now we gotta go through the whole cycle and have a rhythm. We start moving around. Love is a distortion of everything being one and perfect as it is. No. This in particular I'd like to explore. Why this more than another? And everything is going to get explored in its own individual moment that you can't measure, as it's just sort of invented because of the distortion. Love. You know what? Instead of oneness, I have an idea. How about this? How about that? And this and that. Oh man, you forgot we were one and you invented a million things. Now we gotta pull all this crap back into us. Right? But it's more of like a plan anyway. The plan was, let's do everything and then we'll undo everything. And it happened already. And it still is happening. And it never happened. So these three distortions, free will, love, and light, are the things that basically create the universe. Now, I did that. Okay. So now, we're going to get into densities. Light being the last thing, the word, the plan, the reason. The plan went a little something like this. Light. Black. But on the way to black, we got gray, apparently. Because at least this is the count of Kabbalah's tree of life. They like to go this way. They go zig, zig, so yeah. Zig, 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 bang. And that's the 10. That's how it ties together the ordering of these things, right? The white, the gray, the black, it passes over the initial nothing, and the colors begin. Starting with blue, red, yellow, green, orange, violet, and brown. And shades, black and white, they represent sort of the primary beginnings of solid universe. Or solid universe isn't really the right way to say it, because while our universe, which is the third one, is solid, other universes are not. Things can exist in many other forms. We're living in this very, very, 2 + 2 = 4 seeming universe. But that's how we've made it, by believing that everything is like that. And really, in reality, we're all a bunch of creators running around like chickens with their heads cut off and creating terrible things by accident. Okay? So, within these densities, and when we start getting into color and numbers, there's a lot of different ways to look at these things. So forgive me if I confuse you on any level. But for now, we'll cut off the top of these and we'll forget about the white and the nothing and the gray and the black. And we're just going to look at the bottom of the colors. Now these represent the different densities of reality. And they represent a lot of different aspects of consciousness. Starting with the bottom, with our red, we've got the atomic body and beingness and awareness. So, I should do it. For everybody see the kind of chakra thing where you're gonna let that do. Sorry, I know it looks like an orangutan, but okay. So your base chakra is your root chakra here, and this is sort of the beginning of consciousness. This is beingness, awareness, just very subtle, consciousness, which makes up the inanimate objects of the universe. Consciousness here is rocks, and fire, and air, and water. Physical things. Everything is conscious. Everything is vibrating. Everything is an idea and represents a little piece of God. This microphone right here, this cup, atoms and a nucleus, and everything's vibrating. Every single thing. If you could listen and tune in at the right frequency, you'd be like, oh, I can hear it. This is so crazy. Everything. Not to mention our bodies, which are really vibrating in a much more complex way than just that. So that's what you got first. We got our atomic body. So I'll write that down too. The atomic body. Atomic body. Stuff you can see under a microscope. Okay. So then we go up and we get into our sacral chakra, and orange is the dimension here. And the dimension of consciousness here is the organic body, a chemical organic body. Trees and animals, even though pets and stuff, they start to creep up into the next level of consciousness by dealing with us, which is the third level, which I haven't got to yet. But this is growth and movement. Trees and animals, they're following the path of the electromagnetic fields. The whales are in a pod, the birds are in a V. They're being guided by the universe in so many ways to find their way to food, to find their way to shelter, whatever it might be. And this is sort of animal and plant consciousness. Okay. So then we get up to the next one, which is now our solar plexus. Oh no, sorry. Yeah, am I doing it? Yeah. Our solar plexus chakra. And what we're dealing with here is, I should say, I'll just write, you are here. This is the realm that Rob likes to talk about. You are here. Service to self or service to others. You are a conscious being, and you're consciously aware that there's you and that there's others and things like that. Be 1 second. Awesome. Our place is getting cleaned. All right. So, in this third density dimension, a dimension of consciousness, like these dimensions can play with one another, obviously, can sit on one another, but we're in this place where we are consciously aware, and we're, a human consciousness, let's say. Humans and greater. Okay. Now, I'm not going to get too far into people who choose the service to self path. It's very complex. If you're interested in it, I'm not, because I'm on the service to others path. So if you're on the service to self path, go figure it out. It's super complex stuff of like how it's going out. But essentially, there's a certain amount of the universe who doesn't want to play nice, and they still do progress up the consciousness path, but in a different way. And I can kind of explain it, but it's a little complex. And really, if you guys are here, it's because you're looking to fix things. So let's not talk about that. We're all in the service to self path. And if we continue service to others path, and if we continue on this path, we're going to get to the next dimension, which the Earth shifted here in 2012. And that's apparently the whole hubbub with the Mayan calendar, is that we shifted into this fourth dimension. So the Earth is in the fourth dimension, and it's trying to push us into the fourth dimension. And the fourth dimension is the realm of peace and understanding, higher love, and the beginning of social memory complexes, which we talked about earlier. A bunch of people going, hey, I like you so much, let's be one person. Wouldn't that be cool? Higher love and social memory complexes. Now, in this dimension, apparently, we're so loving that we kind of throw ourselves on spears sometimes, because we're like, self-sacrifice, dude, I love you, I'm just gonna kill myself. So this is sort of an extreme thing that we get to, and we decide to balance ourselves in the next universe. And this is our throat chakra here. Over here was our heart chakra. So the throat chakra, we go to a place of of wisdom and light. And we become self-sufficient. Sort of like, we're not exactly self-sufficient when we're here, we're just kind of realizing oneness and love. And then we're like, yeah, love's great. And then we're like, oh, maybe we need to get ourselves really self-sufficient and practice being the powerful beings that we are. And that's what happens in the fifth dimension. The fifth dimension is sort of a monk-like balancing. And apparently the social memory complexes continue to get more complex here now in this higher spot. Now, beyond that is the place where, because beyond that is the sixth, and that's the place where Ra is broadcasting from in the sixth dimension. And apparently, all of our higher selves, lots of spiritual schools of thought that say that we have two guides, two master guides. One who's a muse for us, it's usually a friend of ours, somebody who we had fun with or we think of creatively. And then the other one is a guardian, like a grandmother or a grandfather or somebody who we thought of as being, protective of us. And that these guides are communicating to us from the other side. And then also within meditation, you'll talk about your higher self. And your higher self, as it turns out, is your sixth-dimensional self in the future telling you what you need to know. but without telling you anything that might break the space-time continuum, or whatever the case may be. But our higher selves, the future part of ourselves, broadcasting back to help pull us through. And this is again why time and space and all this stuff is a very sort of formless thing, where it is ever changing. And then finally on the top thing, you've got some pink. I didn't have good colors for these last two, which is the top of our heads, and they seem to believe that this was the next octave. They call it the gateway, the final density of our octave. All personal memory is absorbed into the all, not losing anything but gaining infinity, apparently. Basically absorbing into the all and then journeying into the new universe that's unlike any universe we've ever seen. This is the journey of dimensions. So you could talk about, and this is something Ra talks about, that there's 144,000 higher vibrational energies that have been sent to the planet to try to help us raise our vibration. And you could think of somebody like Martin Luther King Jr. coming from this fifth dimension. Not the fifth. One, two, three, four. Sorry, I did the colors wrong and it's messing me up. Too many things to do. I'm doing great considering I have partial dyslexia. My mother, she can never call out a proper name of anything. It's always backwards. I do it sometimes, but so I have to double check myself to make sure that I do it. So anyway, MLK would be more coming from this heart place. He's coming from this place of love. And people who come from the place of love, from this higher place, they are likely to be activists. So when you see somebody with a loving heart who's actively trying to change the world, that's because really they're from this fourth dimension and they know love and they're willing to sacrifice themselves and put themselves out there for the others. Now, when you're dealing with this fifth dimension, you're dealing more with gurus, and like the Buddha, people who go off into a monastery to get their stuff together. They're like, oh man, we need to calm everybody down. We need to get everybody's love in balance. People are too crazy. Because those are higher spiritual teachers from this higher level. And I suppose the sixth dimensional people are more balanced of the two. Do we have any immediate questions about these sort of chakras and the dimensions here? And how much time have we been going for? Or actually, I can tell myself. Thank you, Michael. Or I can't tell myself. I turned off my phone. What time? What time is it?
It is 8:26.
8:26. All right, cool. So let me see where we go from here. All right. Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about two things, and then we're going to end the class. Slightly lengthy things, not like super lengthy, but we're talk about reincarnation, and then we're going to play a little game inspired by a story that I'm working on right now, but it really will help kind of show you and help us all kind of think about what we're about to learn. Okay? Reincarnation. If you haven't read the work of Dolores Cannon, I recommend it. If you haven't read a book called Many Lives, Many Masters, I recommend that too. Dolores Cannon takes various people through hypnosis into a place called the Akashic Record, which is the sum of all knowledge and information that's ever been recorded in the mind of the universe. From this place, any question can be answered. And it is in this place that we go in between our lives, or at least for some of our time. Now, when we, and let me just see right here, because I do have this written down in a way that I kind of liked. So, the first thing to know that's very important is reincarnation is a personal choice. Okay? Nobody is imposing anything upon you. That's the first thing you hear everybody hear all the time. Like, nobody's judging me, man. Nobody's judging you, man. You are judging you. That's how it goes. So it's fair. You will be given every drop of knowledge that you need to see if you really were not being good. You'll know. You'll feel it. And if you are not being good, you're going to go, oh my goodness, I had no idea. And that's it. From that place, you're going to communicate with the higher selves, the future selves of all these people who you've interacted with, who are just other parts of you, and you're going to make deals with them to figure out how to make it right, how to make it better in the future, to give yourself the opportunity to experience a similar situation again, but this time make a different choice and grow and learn and better yourselves, better both of you. So that's the first thing. So now, between lives, each entity assumes a form that allows them to review the previous life and make a choice about which new life to reincarnate into. So again, more so than just choosing how you might punish yourself, and it shouldn't really be thought of as that, choosing to make things right. You know, if you made something wrong and you knew it, you'd want to make it right. You'd be like, is there some way that I can do that? And if you're God, hell yeah, there is. Okay, what if I do this and this? That's good, that feels good to me. I'm gonna go do that. And then also, what is the best way to do that? What's the best way to make it up to you and to be able to live with you again and to be able to have the love of my life relationship with you that we didn't have in the Middle Ages because I was murdered and you were hung and you know, that's what's going on with everybody. We're trying to get back to those lost pieces of our soul and those experiences that we didn't get before that we wanted. And then we write a whole life where we can make up for the things that we want to make up for, learn the things we want to learn, and experience the things that we got a taste for in the previous life. And we see how that goes with the pets, right? Because we know, because Ra talks about this, that the pets are actually crossing into the third dimension because the pets are hanging out with us and they're trying our food and they're watching shows with us and getting into our routines, and they are getting pulled into our dimension where we fancy different things more than others, where we're in balance, where we're using free will. And they become part of that same system. And eventually have to go into that same bit of reincarnation. And actually my brother Shane has so many interesting little stories in relation to animals. A really terrible story about getting eaten by wolves. He did a past life regression for himself through the internet, and it rung through my family so powerfully. We all felt like somebody walked over our graves. You must be willing to choose, I'm just going to read it the way I wrote it. Yeah, you got to be willing to choose to let go of all you've gained up until that point. So everything that you've amassed knowledge-wise, so the Buddha, if he comes back in, he doesn't come back with all the Buddha's knowledge. He comes back as Dave, and Dave has to figure out how to be the Buddha and better again. You know, and each time it's easier because you've done it before. But you all, everybody, nobody, there's no exception. If you're coming into this realm, living in this place, you go through the realm of forgetting and you have to walk yourself out of it. So, today I spoke about this on a little Facebook Live thing about babies. When I was a kid, they taught me that babies came in blind. Essentially, that was what I was led to believe. Babies were blind, they couldn't really see, and they were slowly figuring out things. They wouldn't react to laughter or facial expressions or whatever. They couldn't really see. They could only see a little bit in front of their face or something like that. So, as it turns out, what I've come to learn through spiritual experience is a baby is not blind. A baby is blinded. A baby is coming in with infinite sensitivity, knowledge, and understanding. But it's all meaningless to the baby because the baby only needs Roy G. Biv, squares, math, 1, 2, 3, numbers. The baby doesn't need infinite awareness. The baby needs to hear its mom, needs to find the boob. That's it. The baby limits itself from every possibility to focus on the thing that is giving it love. And that's how it tunes in to our universe. It literally just sort of dials itself in and then continues to build upon what its perspective and its experience is based on us. And that's why children are such a huge gift to us, and we mess it up all the time because they're so open. And we close their doors. We're the ones, we go, no, I've been down that road before, don't do it. Just because you had that experience does not mean that they're going to have that experience. The greatest thing that we can do for our children is to make them feel that we trust them. We trust their hearts. The greatest thing we can do for their children is let them fail while they're near us. Let them smash their face in right next to us so that we're there to help them out. Helping somebody to avoid problems that seem like they're just destined to do, you're just getting in the way of their progress. And people who struggle and have difficulty in the world and seem to be accident prone are actually just on a more challenging path of spiritual growth. And they are going to learn and grow spiritually faster than anybody in this room. Whoever is taking the hardest path is going to be growing. Sometimes some of the people can't get out of some of the lessons they've learned or find themselves in a rut or get themselves wherever. But the people who are brave enough to just keep on keeping on, it's there for us. It's there for everybody to have. And that's the reincarnation process. That's us getting a chance to do it again and learn a little better and learn a little better and learn a little better. And it's never us being judged by some outside force. It's just us judging ourselves and deciding, you know what? I need to learn this. I need this. Does anybody have any questions about reincarnation? Okay. Sure.
So, what about somebody who chooses to take their life when they come back?
At the end of the day, nobody's wrong. Okay? Because everybody's God. So, and this is this thing too of we're talking about white supremacy or whatever else. They're human beings, and they think they're right, and they're God. And when God thinks he's right, and somebody else isn't willing to treat them like they're equals, explosions happen. At a certain point, we all have to just sort of agree to disagree and try to move forward in peace. Because what's happening is we get to an end point of ideology. I cannot go with you any further. You think things I don't think. Ultimately, we're all one, and we largely think all the same things. We all love our moms. We all love our dads. We all love our friends. We're so grateful to have ice cream. 99.9999% are we alike. And we could just make lists all day long. We could sit here for hours. And you might get exhausted for ideas, and then all of a sudden you'll find a new line. Oh yes, that's right, we're all aligned in that way. No, we're alike in that way. We're mostly alike, a little different. And how we communicate our ideas so often is the things that get in the way. And it's really behooves us all to try to get better at communicating with people who yesterday we thought we could not see eye to eye with, because it's when we allow ourselves to try to that they can finally see eye to eye with us, and we can make some progress. One of my favorite human beings on the planet right now is a black guy who goes around to the KKK, and he is collecting hoods from Klansmen. He's literally just befriending them, not going away, being a good guy. What do you need in your life? Whatever it might be, just being a person who cares, treating them like human beings, and before they know it, they're like, I no longer believe in this. And he has a growing collection of hoods. It makes me cry. It's just the sweetest thing. What a great guy. What a brave man. And he's just challenging himself to just know his worth and honor what he believes, that, we are one and that things are good and, love is infectious and stuff like that. And that's how we need to believe, because, that's what all this says. And also, we're all one thing. So us being afraid of each other, or what's the word? I don't want you to succeed because then that means it might take away from me. That idea of survival of the fittest, it's nonsense. Infinite compensation. Infinite compensation. That's some silly idea that somebody had one day, and we kept believing it, and we need to stop. So, wrapping up on reincarnation, and I'll just a couple recommendations, because I'm not going to get into this stuff again in the future, but this seemed like a good place to talk about it. If you are into the reincarnation conversation, these things, Dolores Cannon, Convoluted Universe, the Book of Ra, the Raw Materials, I mean, and they'll tell you how many thousands of years between lives. I mean, like, I can tell you, I have notes, in my book of like, apparently you're a rock or water for billions of years in timeless existence. You're a chemical organic body like an animal and a tree for 1 to 200,000 years. You're doing this sort of existence as a human being for 78 to 100,000 years. And then it goes into, the next level. And you can find like these years and stuff. I mean, it's neither here nor there. For extended periods of time, you are reincarnating in various things up the dimension until you're ready. And that's actually the last thing that I want to talk to you about to wrap this class up. So I got this story that I'm working on that I just really love called Falling. And it's about this guy who falls into this infinite chasm in like the center of the earth, and he just keeps falling. And he's just falling and falling and falling and falling. And in the beginning, it's red, and then it goes to the orange, and then the yellow, and then the green, and the blue, and the indigo, and he falls through the density. But he can't break into the next density until he spiritually progresses, until he gets over the lessons of the density in question. And now, I like to teach people when they're in the store that the stones and the colors are all corresponding with the energy centers of your chakras, just like we wrote down right here. So, if you're ever trying to heal somebody, help somebody with stones, or really with anything, like this would go with food or incense or whatever else, you want to root yourself to the earth, eat something red. The animals are pretty balanced because largely they eat green. And that's the one in the center, that's the balancing one, that's the heart chakra, right? This is your sexual reproduction, but also just kind of your stirring desire, your interest, but also can be tied to things like shame. You're interested in that thing and then you're ashamed. Why are you wearing that hat? Because I like it. That's shame. That goes from I'm interested in a thing to I was rejected. I was hurt. And that's why we hold those sorts of things. And when we have a bad enough disruption in that area, it'll turn into something that's affecting us, testicular cancer or something like that. Moving up into your solar plexus and your stomach. Stomach cancer. People, a good friend of mine's always kind of churning, worrying about his family, and just he can't control them, and they're crazy people. But he thinks it's his job to keep them together and keep it going, and he's giving himself an ulcer, essentially. Because it's, and that's how that goes. The energy has to work itself out. We'll have a physical something that will be attached to it. But again, ailments of that variety would go there. Heart something is in your heart over here. Throat, communication. If you're not having trouble communicating, you might get throat cancer, something like that. And then sensitivity in your eyes. So essentially, these colors and all of these things, they work in line with, let's see, what's the best way to kind of go about showing you. Okay. So, if we go with the Kabbalah breakdown of what these colors and these centers mean, which I like their breakdown, we can see the different sort of emotional situations can be kind of folded into all these different things. So we'll start here with red, right? Red is serenity, strength, but also fear and judgment. The baseline of bravery, strength, fortitude, but also, not fortitude, get out of here, flow like water, do something else. That is coming straight from this place. That sort of baseline strength and action, or fear and running away, connected to your legs, coincidentally. When we go over to orange, we get to majesty, splendor, glory, concept as a process. Let's see if I can explain that a little bit better. Honor and occurrence, discontinuance. So this is desire and interest and shame, kind of really, as I summed it up before. These are some other ways they're explaining it that are a little bit denser, but I think better for you guys to think of it as desire and interest or shame. Action, bravery, fear. All right, so continuing up, we got in our green chakra, we got victory, endurance, continuity, and concept object. Sorry for the way they wrote this thing. I was writing it down the way they wrote it because I wanted to remember, but it's very hard to understand. So continuity is sort of like conscious balance and order of things. The inner knowing of what is preferred, what is not preferred, and ultimately where you're coming from in your center of your balance. More sort of conscious inner knowing of yourself, of sort of the continuity of things. It's self-confidence is actually really probably the best way to describe it. That your confidence in going around doing things, or not confidence. It's following that heart that knows, because everybody is God and everybody knows infinitely. So it's like the infinite information's there, but do you believe that you're God, or do you not really feel that so much? Because that's going to dictate your confidence, not your fear and your bravery, like over here, or your desire or shame, or whatever, but like your confidence of action. So now up to the blue in your throat, we've got love, mercy, loving kindness, and communication. There are other things. Communication is to come about to terms, to be able to make deals and arrangements, and sort of betrayal of your own voice, like not being able to communicate things the right way, not being able to stick up for yourself, or sticking up for yourself in the wrong way. There's a lot of different ways that things can go wrong with your throat chakra and how you're communicating. Again, because everything's very confusing in the universe that you're living in. And then finally, we go up to the purple. And this is foundation, reactualization, updating, reinventing, channeling. So channeling is the best thing to say here. From this place in our heart, we know what the right answer is. From this place, we're theoretically trying to get to that place of balance. From this place, we have a sensitivity to the universe around us, which not only includes the universe, which is us, which is heavy things, and I'm sensitive to this, and I can see you, and I can hear things that make noise, but also a general sensitivity to energy, and energy exists within the ether, within the other side of things, and energy can be experienced, and that sensitivity, the sensitivity of channeling, and being able to get information, hear information, is something that comes along in this section of the chakra system. I'm going to basically wrap things up right here with any questions that we have and one or two little notes on it all. Any questions while I'm looking to my last little bit that I wanted to share? Cool. All right. And anything, Michael, from people at home?
Just
Okay, cool. How do I want to wrap this thing up right here? Okay. So, in theory, my guy, he's fallen through the red. And he has some sort of crazy experience remembering how he was pushed off of the monkey bars and he lost his balance, felt completely unstable as people were laughing at him, and he fell back and he broke his leg, and he's been scared of falling ever since. In this moment, he's wrestling with this and he has to get over it. It's okay, I'm falling. What am I going to do? It's been hours now. And now he's on to the orange area, right? Now in the orange area, he's brought back to a time where he was adventurous and he wanted to explore and he wanted to do things like jump out of a plane. But his mother and his brother, they were like best buddies and they would kind of gang up on him and like rag on him because they were half-brother and a stepmother. And it was a terrible situation for him and he felt great shame and he became a bookworm. And now this is the first time he's ever gone on a dig in his life and he falls through a chasm, he's falling through this thing, and now he has to get over the shame that he feels from this experience. And now when he does, he's on to the next one. And now maybe here, at his heart, he gets to the green one eventually, and he's recognizing a time with his father where he knew that they should go left. They were on the trail. We gotta go left, Dad. And his dad's like, no, we're gonna go right. And he knew it. And his dad brought him right into a huge forest fire. And his dad was horribly burnt, and they were both in the hospital for a few months or whatever. And his dad didn't trust him, and it always just fundamentally made him not trust himself. But he saw in that moment, he knew in that moment that he was trustworthy, that he did have sense and information, he knew things. He was just as valuable as his father who led them to calamity. And now he gets over that and he gets to fall through another one. I think I've hopefully given you a sort of illustrated idea about what's really happening to you right now in this grand illusion, the school of hard knocks, the spiritual school where we learn and we grow. And we have to break on through all of these chakra systems and all of these guiding forces and bring ourselves into balance, into a state of neutrality. The last thing that I want to say is there's a terrible thing going on, Right now it's really coming to a bit of a head, and I guess it's happened for forever because I've seen quotes about this all my life. But now I see it happening. Things like, you live long enough to see yourself become the bad guy. And right now we're living in this very polarizing time where we seemingly have a bad guy, we have freedom-fighting good guys, and then over here we just got the victims. The meek, who will be affected kind of adversely by the bad guys and by the good guys alike. And now the thing is, this is just a terrible wheel. It just keeps rolling. Once the bad guys are defeated, invariably in order to defeat the bad guy, the good guy must become the bad guy. Now, the good guy is the new bad guy. And from the pool of victims will rise the new good guys to rise up and defeat the tyranny of the new bad guys. This is the loop we have been on for ages. And the only reason why we don't recognize it is because we keep doing a really good job of demonizing the bad guys. Like, yeah, but they're Nazis. And I understand. But unfortunately, thinking like that has got us here. And we have to start to demystify our super polarized positions so that we can try to make progress in the world. Because being the way we are, we eventually just break, and then we fold right back into this process again. The only way we can get out of this is by turning this triangle into its more dimensional shape. And we get a neutral perspective. From a place of neutrality, we can make the choices that need to be made on everybody's behalf, caring about everybody. That's how we have to be thinking. And it's not agenda-driven to bring an imbalance into anything. It's just neutral to bring a balance to the system that we're in, to know that we're supposed to be in balance. We're one thing, and we're all out of whack right now. So try to remember that if you're one of the good guys, then there's a bad guy and there's victims. If you're one of the bad guys, then there's good guys and there's victims. If you're a victim, there's good guys and bad guys. And you want to bring yourself to that fourth place of neutrality. Anyway, that's it for today's class. We're going to be doing this for the next 12 weeks. Yeah. Every Monday until the end of the year. And we're going to be focusing on a different law each time. So next time we're going to focus on the principle of mentalism, of the Hermetic law, or the law of mind, and other things that are in peripheral association of those things. Like today I decided to do sort of the spiritual creation theory as it is said by Ra, because it's the law of one. Seemed like a good place to start the universe. As we continue, I'm going to be pulling a lot of different esoteric information that I think is supportive and applies to these things. So it won't be more of the same. It'll be completely different conversations next week. Although we will once again go over the basic laws so that we're all on the same page and we know what we're up to. But yeah, next week is the principles of mentalism and the law of the mind. And if you can't come down here, you can get the class online, and you can actually watch it after the class is over, because it'll stay up there. You get a private link. Anyway, thanks everybody for coming down. Thanks everybody for being here in person. And thank you guys all for watching at home. And that's it. Have a great day. Okay.